Welcome to another episode where we answer the most pressing questions about the brain. This is Psyche Academy. In this episode, we talk about Tourette's and part of the brain associated with it. Then, we dive into shopping and why we are so bad at it. Then, we take a magnifying glass into the spooky side of our brain and why some of us love horror. Then, we jump on the Game of Thrones hype train and learn what it does in our brain when we watch it. Finally, we end with a microscopic look of our brain and its internal navigational system. We've got a lot to cover, so buckle up and let's get started.
Chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder.
It is violent, morbid, and unforgiving in every sense of the word. Yet we still watch it. Whether you root for the Starks, Lannisters, or Targaryens, you are bound to get your heart broken. But how does the brutal world of Game of Thrones get you hooked and clamoring for more? For those of you who do not know what I am talking about, GOT is about 4 major houses fighting to sit on the Iron Throne when the king died. It involves murder, rape, manipulation, frozen zombies, and dragons. On the face of it, the attractions are obvious. Large helpings of sex, violence, bolstered by a serpentine storyline said to be inspired by the War of Roses, one of the bloodiest periods of English history. But let's take a closer look. First, we take a look at its storyline. A relatively bland storyline does nothing to our brain, and it is remarkable how our brain responds to effective storytelling. We use stories to make sense of our individual experiences. A story like Game of Thrones enables viewers to not only interpret their own lives, but also to vicariously navigate other lives that are alien to their own. Similarly, we particularly enjoy Game of Thrones because we feel a personal stake when another character dies, which is called shared pain, that involve regions related to the first-hand experience of pain, such as the anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. Empathy lets us experience this thanks to our right supramarginal gyrus that separates our own emotions from what we see in others. It also helps us understand the feelings of others and not to be too self-centered, otherwise we would turn into narcissists and sociopaths. This storyline also challenges our morality. The anterior cingulate cortex, involved in error detection, is triggered whenever we see something we perceive to be immoral. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex is consistently engaged in moral judgment and seems to play a crucial role in the mediation of emotions engaged during moral processing. Dramatic stories evoke feelings of distress and empathy induced by the neurochemicals cortisol and oxytocin. The combination of these chemicals changes how our brain work and changes our brain chemistry that we can translate readily into concrete actions, allowing us to care and connect with others. In other words, Game of Thrones makes us a better person.
You might have seen someone do that, or you probably heard it before, but you do not know what it means. Tourettes Syndrome is a problem with the nervous system that causes people to make sudden movements or sounds, called tics, that they can't control. Some people may blurt out words they don't intend to say.
It often starts in childhood, and more boys than girls get it. Symptoms often get better as children grow up. In paper published in 2015, gamma-aminobutyric acid is responsible for suppressing tics, and a greater quantity of this is produced during adolescence, which might account for the reduction of symptoms. Tourette's has been linked to different parts of the brain, including an area called the basal ganglia, which helps control body movements. Researchers think that the trouble in this brain network may play a role in Tourette's. Another study suggests that enlarged amygdala is also fairly common with sufferers of Tourette. Doctors don't know exactly what causes these problems in the brain, but genes probably play a role. The main symptom is tics. Some are mild, they're not even noticeable. Others happen often and obvious. Stress, excitement, or being sick can make them worse. The more severe ones can be embarrassing and can affect your social life. There are 2 types of tics: motor tics, which involve movement, and vocal tics called capillalia, which include swearing, merde, sniffing, or barking. However, Tourette's sufferers' brains are structured for greater motor control. Research suggests that the parts of the brain associated with cognitive motor control were more developed in Tourettes syndrome. Doctors aren't sure why, but about half of people with Tourette's also have symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Tourette's can also cause problems with anxiety, learning disabilities such as dyslexia and OCD. Many times, tics are mild and don't need to be treated.
Imagine yourself sitting in the dark, your heart is pounding, and you hear all sorts of noises. The hair at the back of your neck stands on end, and you begin to sweat. These sensations are indications that you are experiencing fear. When we experience fear, our body responds by sensory actions like indicated heart rate, goosebumps, respiration. The thalamus picks up sensory data while the sensory cortex interprets them. The hippocampus receives and stores these conscious memories and then establishes the contents of what is going on, which in case is fear. The amygdala also plays a big part in determines the threat while accessing all fear memories you had before. Now, the hypothalamus is where it all ends up. This is the on and off switch for our fight or flight response facing a terrifying situation. The amygdala, however, is the gatekeeper to the autonomic nervous system and the only one that can tell the hypothalamus how to respond through our fear memories. Joseph Little, a neuroscientist at NYU, came up with two categories for fear response: the low road and the high road. Both of these happen at the same time, but the low road is much quicker. Thus we scream, ah, shout, ah, or jerk to stand when something jumps at you. The high road, however, is much slower, as it's more thoughtful and analytical of the situation. This is when you realize, oh man, it's just a cat. Fear, as intense as it is, evokes tragic catharsis for some people. This basically means that people who seek out vicarious experiences have different emotions and cognitive needs, like the need for effect, wherein they want to experience some stronger emotions, or the sensation-seeking tendencies, like those who want to thrill and have fun. Experiencing fear in a controlled environment evokes both negative and positive responses. And the more fear thrill seekers experience, the more positive emotions they feel as well. In other words, fear is fun.
It's Christmas!
Every store you pass by has magnificent window displays, and you can't help but get inside the store and just look around. Before you know it, you came out of the store with bags and bags of stuff you don't actually need.
Well, you don't have to blame yourself too much, because how the store is set up and the products presented may have a lot of influence with your behavior as well. It is really easy to enter a shopping center, but they really make it hard to get out.
The store sets you up to buy more than you intend to, by just playing the right songs, the right setups, even smell and painting the right colors like sales. Ever wonder why sales and discount signs are of the color yellow?
Study shows that bright and striking colors like yellow catch our attention more than muted and dull colors. They load us up with so much sensory experience to our right brain decides to love the products. Companies have gotten so good at learning our behavior that sometimes they know what we want before we do. Freaky, right?
Apparently, we like buying stuff because it makes us feel better by activating key areas of the brain. According to another study, 64% of women and 40% of men in the US shop because it improves their mood, also known as hedonic elevation. However, the novelty of a new shoes wears off, and so is your good mood.
The surge of dopamine triggered by shopping is linked more in the anticipation process in shopping rather than the actual experience. Apparently, seeing something new for the first time activates the midbrain area. It increases more dopamine levels.
This social consumerist effect, called the Diderot effect, can also explain why by buying new things, we get tired of everything we already own, driving us to buy more new things.
Our need to find unity in our possessions may be because of our need of unity within ourselves. To quote Denis Diderot, I am the master of my own road. I become the slave of my new one.
How How does your brain, a lump of tissue trapped in your skull, know where it is, where it's going, and where it's being in three-dimensional space? You probably walk out of your house, immediately see where you're at, and step to a destination like you don't even think about it. Simple and uncomplicated. Well, not exactly. The brain performs a complex calculation that works a lot like GPS. The back part of the hippocampus is responsible for spatial memory that keeps track of all the possible walking paths to help you simulate different ways your journey could go, much like GPS. The brain's internal navigational system was first discovered in 1994 by O'Keefe that gained him a Nobel Prize together with Moser and Moser in 2005. O'Keefe discovered what he called grid cells that fires only when an animal, or in our case, human, is in a particular spot. With the experiments on rats, grid cells are maps or navigational charts of the rat's environment. These cells help us to place ourselves and know where we are in space by creating representations of the internal world inside our brains. These grid cells are located in the entorhinal cortex of the hippocampus, tied with the growth and development of memory. And how fascinating that recent studies indicate that the entorhinal cortex is the first part of the brain that succumbed to Alzheimer's. How the grid cells play a part in the development of neurological disorders is still unknown, but with the pace of our technology, we might be closer to discovering the cause of neurodegenerative diseases more than we realize. As we move through our lives and discover new places, new grid cells are created that adds to the volume of our brain. So, if you want to increase the size of your brain, you might want to discover new places on your next vacation.
Well, there you have it. Another episode in the bag and our brains got bigger. If you want to be smarter with us, go to youtube.com/psycheacademy and see you next time.